I never thought that I would make a video about vampires. In order for me to start working on a video, I need at least a little bit of alleged evidence. Just enough to make me and my viewers believe that there might just be a chance that it could be real. And when I stumbled upon these extremely creepy stories of the vampire's crypt, located in Erie, Pennsylvania, I knew I had to make a video about it. Nobody knows the name of the man in question who was buried in this crypt. The name had been scratched off and only a V remains in front of the entrance. This crypt also had been severely burned in the past. This legend all started when an unknown man died not too long after coming back from Romania, and after his death, he was buried in this crypt. Now, shortly after his death, dead bodies were soon being discovered all throughout the suburbs that surrounded the cemetery. Each of these victims had puncture wounds on their necks, and their bodies were all drained of blood. The cemetery's maintenance man that lived on the grounds would see a man coming and going from the crypt at night. After observing this strange man for a while, the maintenance man was convinced that this man was a vampire, and he was responsible for all the recent deaths. Now, shortly after informing the townspeople, the crypt was burned, the doors were chained, and the names above the opening were violently removed. After the crypt was chained, there was no more deaths, and this only confirmed what they all believed at the time, that this man was a vampire. The ones that knew this information tried their hardest to keep it a secret, but over time, this information did leak, and eventually everybody that lived in that area knew about the vampire in the crypt. Once the teenagers of that area knew about the vampire in the crypt, there were many break-in attempts. In the 1930s, a young man was determined to get inside. He was obsessed with the legend, and he really wanted to find out if there was a vampire lurking within the crypt. The young man brought a chisel and a crowbar, and all night long, he banged away until he was finally able to enter the crypt. While entering the tomb, he was overcome by an extremely foul odor. Then he discovered a wooden coffin that possessed a corpse. The young man was extremely proud of himself. He couldn't believe that he was actually able to break in. But now, he needed to prove it to his friends, so he stole a ring from the corpse within the wooden coffin. After stealing the ring, the young man ran as fast as he could to his friend's house. He told his friend that he was able to break into the crypt. Then he showed his friend the ring that he stole from the vampire. His friend was shocked, and he believed his story. It didn't take too long for the story to spread, and right after school, some of the young man's friends wanted to see the vampire's ring, so they all went over to his house. The mother told the boys that he was asleep, but the boys were very persistent, and the mother decided to go wake him. When she went into his room, she found that her son was dead. She saw his lifeless eyes staring into the darkness, and his face was frozen in fear as if he died trying to scream. She also noticed that one of his fingers had been ripped from his hand, and this was the same finger he put the stolen ring on. Now the kids were terrified, and they told the authorities the whole story. The authorities quickly went to the crypt, and they saw that someone did manage to break in. The crypt was again sealed and rechained. After this incident, the police kept a very close eye on the crypt, and they hoped that nobody would ever enter it again. A couple of decades later, a group of teenagers organized a huge party outside of the crypt. The teenagers were having a great time when out of nowhere, a young man climbed upon the crypt and started to curse at the vampire that lay within. Then the young man just stopped. It was a very dark night and nobody could see or hear him. Then he started to scream hysterically and he tumbled to the ground. This boy just started to go completely insane. He was terrified and was making no sense at all. Later that night, his friends had to take him to the hospital, and all throughout the night he kept screaming and talking gibberish. He eventually climbed out the window and he jumped to his death, making everybody wonder what happened to this boy. What did he see or hear while on the roof of the vampire's crypt? What would make him so scared that he would take his own life? Now, over the years, there have been tons of alleged encounters with the vampire that lies within the crypt, making a lot of people believe that vampires just might exist. There has also been some pretty creepy recent discoveries made that also fuels a fire for vampire believers. There was a recent discovery made in Poland not too long ago. Archaeologists found a very disturbing burial site. They stumbled upon graves that contained skeletons whose heads had been severed and placed within their legs. Some of these skeletons had stones on their necks, and some were tied down by metal. Archaeologists and scholars both believe that this ritual was carried out because whoever buried these people thought that they were vampires, and they did not want them to escape their graves. Here is another recently found 13th century grave of a skeleton in Bulgaria, where a stake is placed right through the heart. This skeleton is now known as the Vampire of Venice, as someone jammed a stone block into this woman's mouth. Throughout the centuries, there have been dozens more of these kind of graves found. Now, whatever we may believe about vampires today, one thing is for sure. Men and women who lived not that long ago believed without a shadow of a doubt that vampires are real. And when they caught one of them, they made sure that they stay buried. Until next time, this is Paranormal Junkie. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.